So for the purpose of this demonstration, I've already created a complete rupture of the Achilles tendon at this classic location approximately 6 centimeters above the insertion of the calcaneus. We first addressed the proximal side, and so we're going to go ahead and use our PARS on the proximal side, place our sutures, and then address the distal side. So again, I've got my transverse incision, I protected my sural nerve, and then I protect the pseudosheath as well. Now, as I mentioned, the pseudosheath oftentimes is ruptured, but I'll have my assistant go ahead and just take a send and hold that pseudosheath up so that I can then go ahead and take my PARS and know that I'm inside the pseudosheath. That's very important. You want the PARS, these inner tines of the device, to be inside the pseudosheath. That ensures that when you pull your sutures back out of this transverse incision, that those sutures will indeed be inside the pseudosheath, thereby protecting your sural nerve from any iatrogenic injury. So what we've got now here is the device. We slide it through with the tines closed, and then we capture both sides of the Achilles tendon. Now you'll see as I do this, oftentimes the Achilles tendon will be pushed up proximally. So the trick here is to go ahead and take an Alice clamp. Now, oftentimes people say, well, I put my sutures in and they slid out, I didn't capture any tendon. What usually has happened is that your device is too deep. It's too deep to the Achilles itself. You want to stay superficial. So with our device in, and now we're captured the tendon itself, we're going to place our needles. The set that you have will come with 3 needles. You're certainly welcome to use all 3 at one time. My preference is to use 2 needles. I think regardless, it's important to stabilize the unit, the PARS unit, to the tendon itself. So we'll go in position number 1 right here, and we slide through. These needles were developed so they're not so sharp as to cut through a nerve, but they're sharp enough to get through the soft tissue and the integrity of the Achilles tendon itself. So now my first needle is there and it stabilizes the device. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put my second one. And these first 2 are going to be your transverse needles. So now you can see I've got my first 2 needles in place and they stabilize the device. Now you can certainly put a third needle here, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to stair step my needles down. So I'll take the white suture tape, and again, this is a good time to go ahead and mention that while we used FiberWire very successfully for many years, over the past year I've gone to using the SutureTape exclusively. I like the SutureTape because it gives me a much smaller, softer, less prominent knot, so I have less concern for knot irritation. The other advantage of SutureTape, it has better pull-through strength for the soft tissues like the Achilles tendon. So we'll go ahead and we'll put the white one, that's our first one, we'll put that in the number 1 needle, and I'll just draw that through. Now once I have that number 1 in, I then will stair step this down. So this needle then goes to number 3. So then I pass number 3, and then I'll take the blue stripe suture tape through the second needle. And again, with that idea of stair stepping down, I'll go ahead and draw this through, leave about 50% on each side, and then again, I'll go ahead and now put this in number 4. And number 3 and number 4 are utilized for our lock suture technique. If you didn't want to lock on either side of the stump, you could just go position 1, 2, and 5. But in this situation, and routinely, I always use at least 1 lock suture on both sides of the rupture itself. So in this situation, we're demonstrating this in holes 3 and 4. So this is our first loop suture that will be utilized for our lock technique. And so I pull that needle through, and I'm going to go ahead and then put this in number 5. And we're going to put the other loop suture. And you'll see what we did is we took the non-loop end and pulled that through for position number 3. On this side, we put a looped end for position number 4. So again, you got to make sure you got a loop on either side of the calf to appropriately lock that 5th suture. So now our 5th suture, this is what we call our zebra suture. It's a black-white stripe. Again, it's a SutureTape suture material, and we're going to draw that through, and then now we have our apparatus. You'll see on the device there's also a position 6 and 7. I'll turn that so you can see that right there. Position 6 and 7. That's if you want to double lock on this side of the rupture. I do double lock. All my elite athletes are going to start earlier rehab, perhaps more aggressive rehab, to basically get more security for my sutures. I don't think you have to do it in all patients, but I like to do it in my elite athletes who are going to be a little more vigorous with their rehab program. If I do use position 6 and 7, I typically would have 2 FiberLink looped sutures that I place in both those holes to then utilize number 5 as a lock suture. As demonstrated here, by just having 1 lock suture, we're going to actually have our blue stripe suture become our lock suture. So at this point in time, now with all our suture tape and our loop suture in proper position, I'm going to draw this out. And you'll see that I can then go ahead and take these out. I know where I am. Take this. It's all about suture management. You want to make sure that you keep all your sutures in proper order and on the proper side of the Achilles rupture. And we'll do the same thing for the other side. But by having one free now, and again, because suture management is so important here, I keep everything in the jig until I've got it all released, and then I separate them off to the side. So now what you have to do is you have to recreate the order that you put them in. So we'll have our white on top and black at the bottom. Now, as I mentioned before, our blue stripe is going to become our lock suture. So what you can do, and there's many different ways to do this, but I go under the other three below it, find my loop, put that zebra through the loop of one of your loop sutures, and then your assistant can do the same on the other side. Now, as you see, then I can take the other loop, this is the non-looped end of that other loop suture, I can use that to draw the blue stripe through from one side to the other. And then we'll do the same on the other side. And again, that way I know I've kept my sutures in proper order. And then I test them all. So here's my most proximal one, I test it. My most distal one, test it. And here's my lock-in suture, I'm testing it. In this situation though, we've got excellent capture of this side. I'll take these sutures, I'll put them up on one end. Now we just do this exactly the same thing on the other side. So now you can see we've got all of our sutures placed. Our blue is our locking, our white and our black are our straight transverse non-lock sutures. It is important to test all of them. So I'll go ahead and I'll test them, I'll secure them. Now at this point our sutures are in place, they're secure, we're ready to go ahead and to secure them. What I'll typically do is then maximally plantar flex the foot. So again, I'm a maximum plantar flexion guy. I don't believe in necessarily trying to duplicate any kind of resting tension or comparing to the contralateral side. I've never seen an Achilles tendon repair over tighten. So for that reason, I want to go and secure these sutures in maximum tension. I'll typically secure my non-lock sutures first, and then my last suture that I'll tie will be the lock suture. So in this situation, we know our lock suture is the blue-white stripe. So let's go ahead and we'll take the white, and we'll take the white first, and we'll tie that one down. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead, and you want to form a knot stack on one side. And again, you're just laying a knot down because again, there's no tension on the other side. And so I'm doing that. Again, it's nice and soft. So now on this side, I'm going to be pulling against the knot that I just created and tensioning maximally. So you can see there, plantar flexion and then laying that down. So once I have those in place, I'll go ahead and I'll cut them off. So I want to get them out of the way. Makes it easier just to have them out of the way, and I'll do that just above the knot itself. Now I'll go to my other non-lock suture, which is the zebra, the black-white stripe. And we'll go ahead and secure that. But once it's secure on that side, then I've got a point of fixation to tension against. So we'll go ahead and tension that side. And then once down, you just cut off the redundancy. And then our last suture to address is the lock suture. So I'll really make sure I cinch that down all the way. And same for the last side. I'll lift that pseudo sheath up over my repair, and then I'll just make certain those knots are folded down anteriorly. So once I've done that, I'll take a vicryl suture. I'll basically do a subdermal, a suture capture, where I'll come in and actually grab the soft tissues above the repair itself, and that will draw soft tissues with my healthy pseudo sheath over the repair itself, and then follow that with nylon sutures. So